Have you ever felt like something's been missing? Not from the outside world, but from within. Like there's a part of you that's been asleep, watching, waiting for you to remember. The ancient Nahuatl people believed that every human being is born with a spiritual twin, an energetic counterpart known as the Nahualli. This isn't a metaphor or a poetic idea. It's not your guardian angel or a symbolic archetype. It's you, your essence, your raw power, the part of your spirit that moves freely between worlds. And for centuries, those who walked the spiritual path knew this twin well. They didn't just speak of it, they trained to awaken it. They activated it through vision, silence, ritual, and intent. They didn't need religion or permission or belief systems, they had direct experience. The Nahualli wasn't something you waited for. It was something you remembered, something you summoned, something you became. But over time, we lost that memory. We traded silence for noise. We dismissed visions as dreams. We stopped listening to the part of ourselves that speaks in symbols and moves like wind. And in doing so, we didn't just forget our Nahualli. We forgot ourselves. The world we live in today rarely invites this kind of exploration. We are taught to fear the unseen, to dismiss the unknown, to call ancient wisdom superstition. But the truth remains, beneath all the distraction and disconnection, the Nahualli still waits. Your spiritual twin has never left your side. It's only waiting for you to wake up. In this video, we are not going to explore ideas, we are going to uncover truths. You'll learn 5 real ways that pre-Hispanic shamans activated their Nahualli. These aren't vague rituals or New Age fantasies. They are grounded, raw, and direct. They require nothing but your willingness to remember. If you've ever felt the presence of something watching you in your dreams, if you've ever sensed a part of yourself that doesn't quite belong to this reality, stay with us, because by the end of this journey, you might just remember who you've always been. Before the Nahualli can be activated, it must be remembered. And before it can be remembered, it must be recognized. The ancient shamans of the Nahua world did not begin their journey by reading sacred texts or reciting memorized words. They began by watching the natural world, by listening to silence, by paying attention to the moments when the visible and invisible touched. They believed that the Nahualli often revealed itself through the form of an animal, one not chosen by the individual but bound to their spirit from the moment of birth. This wasn't a metaphor, it wasn't a symbol, it was a living reality. Each human was thought to be born under the influence of a specific day sign. And each day sign held an animal guardian whose energy would echo in the person's behavior, strength, and fate. But knowing your day of birth wasn't enough. The real encounter came through vision, through dreams, solitude, and a willingness to see beyond appearances. Shamans would enter deep states of quiet. They would fast for days. They would sleep on sacred mats placed directly on the earth. They would close their eyes not to rest, but to see, because they knew that the animal wasn't out there somewhere. It was inside them, waiting to surface. Some would dream of jaguars walking alongside them through forests, or eagles circling above vast cliffs. Others would find their animal by watching what followed them in waking life, an animal that appeared again and again until it could no longer be ignored. The message was always the same. I am you. You are me. We move together. And from that point on, the journey shifted. Because once the Nahualli made itself known, nothing remained the same. It would whisper in moments of danger. It would rise during ceremonies. It would appear in visions, not to entertain, but to guide. Today, most people have forgotten how to listen to animals that live inside them. We think of them as external creatures, but the shamans never made that separation. They knew that the instinct of the jaguar, the vision of the owl, the playfulness of the monkey, those were not qualities to be studied. They were aspects of the self to be awakened. And the way they did it was simple, though not always easy. They paid attention. They created silence. They asked to be shown. Before falling asleep, they would speak to the night, not with words, but with energy. Let me see what I carry. Let me meet my twin. Sometimes the answer would come that same night. Other times it would arrive weeks later, unexpected, unprovoked, but unmistakable. If you want to begin this path, start with the intention to remember. Turn off the noise, close your eyes, ask sincerely, then wait. The animal may appear in a dream. It may arrive in waking life, crossing your path again and again until it becomes impossible to ignore. And when it does, don't analyze it, embrace it, walk like it, breathe like it. Call it by name, even if no name comes. The Nahualli doesn't respond to doubt. It responds to recognition. And when you recognize it, you begin to rewire your reality. Because this isn't about imagination. This is about memory. And the animal you remember is not a spirit guide. It is you, the part of you that never forgot how to survive, how to sense, how to know. There is an ancient truth that civilizations across the world have always known, but that the Nahua peoples practiced with fierce precision. Names are not labels. Names are frequencies. And when spoken with intention, they do not just describe reality, they shape it. In the world of the pre-Hispanic shamans, a name was a spell, a breath wrapped in vibration, a way of calling power into presence. But this wasn't just about your everyday name. They understood that each person had a secret name, a true name. One that wasn't chosen at birth but uncovered in silence through contact with the unseen. That name belonged to the Nahualli, and once it was spoken aloud, once it was breathed with awareness, it had the power to awaken what had long been sleeping. But to name your Nahualli was not about choosing something that sounded spiritual or poetic. It wasn't about aesthetics. It was about resonance. The ancients believed that when you breathed with purpose, when you allowed sound to rise from your belly rather than your mind, you would begin to speak in the language of your twin, not with words, but with tones, with vibration. And so they would sit, sometimes alone in caves, sometimes beneath trees, sometimes in the darkness of the early dawn, and they would breathe, not to relax, not to escape, but to remember. With every inhalation, they called themselves back. With every exhalation, they cleared what wasn't theirs. Then when the breath became steady, they would begin to hum, slowly, softly, letting the sound rise and fall like the wind. It was in that hum that the name would begin to take shape, not in letters but in energy. A growl, a whisper, a sound that didn't belong to any language yet felt like home. This name wasn't something to be shared lightly. It was sacred, private, a direct bridge between the waking self and the spiritual twin. And the moment it was spoken with awareness, something shifted. The air felt different. The body responded. The Nahualli stirred, because the name was not just a sound. It was a signal, a declaration, a vibration the universe could not ignore. If you want to walk this path, you must begin with breath. Breath is the first prayer, the first drum, the first chant. And it is through breath that you will feel the stirrings of your twin. Begin by sitting in stillness. Close your eyes, place one hand on your stomach and one on your chest. Breathe in through the nose. Hold. Breathe out through the mouth. Let the breath grow deeper, slower, fuller. Then allow sound to enter, any sound. Let it come from your body, not your mind. And as you hum, as you murmur, listen not just to the noise, but to the feeling beneath it. That is where the name lives. That is where your Nahualli speaks. In time, the name may become clearer, or it may always remain mysterious. That doesn't matter. What matters is the connection. What matters is that you've created a channel, a current, a place where your energy and your twins can meet. And every time you speak that name, every time you breathe it into the world, you're not just calling the Nahualli closer. You're reminding yourself that the veil is thinner than you were told, that your breath is not ordinary, that your voice is a doorway, and that some parts of you will only wake when you dare to speak in a language the world has forgotten, but your soul never has. The Nahualli is not bound by your physical senses. It doesn't live in the world of clocks and borders, of routines and logic. It lives in the space between breath and thought, between wakefulness and sleep, between the seen and the unseen. And that space, what ancient Nahua shamans called the dreaming ground, was not considered a place of illusion or fantasy. It was considered the real world, A place where the soul moves freely, where the Nahualli walks beside you, unhidden, unmasked, unconstrained. But to meet it there, you must learn to cross the bridge, not with your body, but with your awareness. And not as a wanderer, but as a lucid traveler. This was the work of the initiated, the sacred art of conscious dreaming. To most people, dreams are forgotten fragments. They slip through the fingers of the mind before sunrise. But to the pre-Hispanic seers, dreams were doors. And if you approached them with clarity and discipline, they would open with precision. Shamans prepared themselves not by asking for visions, but by becoming ready to receive them. They would cleanse their bodies with bitter herbs, fast for days, burn copal to clear stagnant energy. They would sleep not on soft beds, but on woven mats placed close to the earth, grounding their spirit to the forces below. And before surrendering to the night, they would speak quietly, rhythmically, to the space around them. I will walk with my twin. I will remember where I go. And they did remember, because the Nahualli responds to presence. And when the dreamer becomes aware they are dreaming, the Nahualli no longer hides. It appears, sometimes as an animal, sometimes as a shadow, sometimes as the dreamer themselves, but transformed, radiant, burning with a kind of intelligence that feels more ancient than anything you've known. And in that moment, the dream stops being metaphor, it becomes message, a teaching, a transmission from the part of you that has never forgotten who you are beyond the flesh. If you want to begin walking between worlds, you do not need a mountain or a fire. You need intention. You need presence. And you need to reclaim your dreams as sacred space. Begin by preparing your sleep like the ancients did. No heavy food, no artificial light, no distractions before bed. Lie down with clarity. Place your hand on your heart and speak, not with hope, but with certainty. I am ready to see. And when you begin to dream, do not run from the strange. Move toward it. If you become aware, stay calm. Observe. Ask questions. Listen. The Nahualli speaks not in words, but in symbols, in movement, in presence, and sometimes in silence so complete, it feels like the earth holding its breath. Keep a journal by your bed. The moment you wake, write everything, no matter how incoherent, how fragmented, how bizarre, because within that chaos lives a map, and over time, patterns emerge, encounters repeat, places return, and then one night you will not just dream, you will travel. You will meet your twin not as an idea, but as a presence. And when that happens, something in your waking life will shift. Your body will feel fuller, your intuition sharper, your path clearer, because you will no longer be dreaming alone. You will be dreaming with the part of you that has always walked just a step ahead, waiting for you to remember how to follow. The Nahualli is not light. The Nahualli is not shadow. It is both. To the ancient seers, awakening the twin was not about purity or perfection, it was about wholeness. And wholeness means facing the parts of yourself that you've hidden, rejected, feared, or forgotten. The parts that don't fit the image you've worked so hard to present to the world. In the eyes of the old shamans, the path to power never bypassed the darkness. It went straight through it. They knew that the Nahualli could not fully awaken until you stopped running from your own reflection. Because your twin does not live in the polished surface of your public self. It lives in the rawness beneath, in the instinct that shakes you, in the rage that burns, in the grief that never found words. These weren't abstract ideas for the ancestors, they were truths carried out in ritual. They would gather at night when the moon was high and silence fell thick over the land. Fire would be lit not for comfort, but for confrontation. A circle would be drawn. The participant would step inside, and what followed was not a performance, it was a reckoning. Some would whisper secrets they had never spoken aloud. Others would cut a drop of blood from the tip of their finger and let it fall to the earth, not as a sacrifice, but as a signature. This is all of me. I hold nothing back. There were no masks allowed. No lies survived. The twin responded only when you came as you truly were. Unfiltered, unresolved, unapologetic. To merge with your shadow is not to become dark, it is to become real. It is to stop pretending that you're only love, only peace, only light. The Nahualli is not interested in your performance. It is interested in your truth, and that truth includes the things you've buried. So if you want to walk this part of the path, you must be willing to sit with yourself, not the version others know, the one beneath. Turn off the lights, light a single candle, sit in front of a mirror. Look not at your face, but into your eyes, and ask without fear, what have I abandoned inside me? Then listen, not with judgment, but with presence. Write down what comes. Speak it aloud, not to fix it, not to explain it, just to witness it, just to let it breathe. And then say, I see you. I remember you. You are part of me. You might tremble, you might cry. You might feel the urge to run. Stay. Because the Nahualli responds to courage, and there is no greater courage than facing yourself fully. Once you do, the energy begins to shift. You'll feel a stirring inside, something wild, something sacred, something that doesn't need to be tamed, only acknowledged. That's your twin. That's your animal. That's the part of you that holds the power to walk between worlds. Shadow merging isn't a one-time ritual. It's a relationship, a returning. Each time you embrace another fragment of yourself, your twin becomes clearer, louder, more present. You begin to act with more instinct, speak with more truth, move with more purpose. And not because you've become someone new, but because you've stopped hiding who you've always been. The modern world has trained us to fill every moment with sound, music, conversation, background noise, digital chatter. But the ancients knew something we've forgotten. Silence is not emptiness. Silence is presence. Silence is where truth lives when all the pretending falls away. And to the Nahuatl shamans, silence was not just a state of mind, it was an offering, a sacred act of reverence. Because the Nahualli does not speak in words, it listens for vibration. And nothing amplifies vibration like silence. When everything external goes quiet, what's internal becomes visible. This is why, in the final stage of activating the twin, they would return to the most basic primal condition, the stillness of being with oneself, without noise, without escape. Silence was not optional in the old initiations, it was the gatekeeper, the final threshold. Once the apprentice had dreamed, faced their shadow, and remembered their animal self, they were sent into silence, not for hours, but sometimes for days. Into caves, mountains, sacred groves. No talking, no food, no distractions, just them, the elements, and the ever-watchful Nahualli. What emerged from these silences was not clarity in the form of thoughts. It was knowing in the form of vibration. The kind that doesn't need explanation. The kind that changes the way you walk, the way you breathe, the way you see others. The kind of knowing that only silence can deliver. You don't need a mountain to return to this wisdom, but you do need to be honest. Most people fear silence not because it's boring, but because it reveals. It reveals what we've been avoiding. The sadness, the anxiety, the doubt that gets buried under the noise of daily life. But that's exactly the point. Your Nahualli doesn't live on the surface of your distractions. It waits in the quiet underneath. And if you want to meet it, you must create space. Turn everything off, sit down, do nothing. Not for 10 minutes. Start with 30. An hour if you dare. No music, no phone, no mantra. Just you, your breath, and whatever rises. At first, your mind will protest. It will throw thoughts at you like rocks. But slowly, like a lake after a storm, the surface will settle. And in that stillness, something begins to emerge. A presence. Not external, not imagined, but unmistakable. Some describe it as an ancient calm, others as a watchful awareness. Some feel it in their spine, others hear it in their heartbeat. Whatever it is, it doesn't ask for words. It only asks that you stay. And if you do, you begin to feel it. The Nahualli no longer as an idea, but as a presence moving through you. Guiding, not speaking. Showing, not telling. Silence is the final offering because it requires the most trust. You're not doing. You're not seeking. You're simply allowing. And in that allowing, you send the clearest signal of all. I am ready. I am listening. I am here. That signal is what the Nahualli has been waiting for all along. Not perfection, not effort, but presence. And once it arrives, once you feel that quiet pulse moving through your body like a drum beat from before you were born, you'll understand. All the rituals, all the practices, all the searching, they were never about becoming something else. They were about becoming still enough to hear who you've always been. By now, something inside you may feel different. Not louder, not brighter, just more awake, more aware. And maybe you can't quite name it, but you feel it. A presence, a familiarity, a memory that never belonged to your conscious mind yet lives in your bones. That is your Nahualli stirring. Not a myth, not a symbol, but a force that has been quietly walking beside you since the moment you arrived in this world. It watched you take your first breath. It wandered in your dreams as a child. It whispered when you were alone and didn't know who to talk to. And though you may have forgotten it, it never forgot you. You were never without guidance, never without strength. You were simply surrounded by noise that made you doubt your instincts. That told you the invisible was imaginary. That taught you to silence the parts of yourself that felt too wild, too strange, too real. But now you know better. Now you know that the Nahualli was never outside of you. It was never something to chase. It was something to remember, something to welcome, something to embody. And you don't need rituals passed down in temples or feathers worn by ancient priests to do it. You need breath, you need attention, you need silence, you need honesty, because this is not a fantasy. This is a return to the animal you once were, to the visions that once came freely, to the knowing that doesn't need proof. And if you begin to walk this path not perfectly but sincerely, you will begin to feel the difference. The dreams will change, your instincts will sharpen, the fear will loosen its grip. Not because you've become someone new, but because you finally stopped denying who you've always been. The twin does not arrive like a bolt of lightning. It comes like the rising sun, slowly, steadily, inevitably. And once you begin to walk with it, you stop asking for signs. Because everything becomes a sign. So if something inside you is stirring now, don't ignore it. That stirring is a response, a confirmation. The call you made has been received. The question you held has been answered, not in words, but in recognition. And now the only question that matters is, what will you do with what you remember? Will you return to the surface, to the noise, to the forgetting? Or will you walk forward with your twin, your truth, your whole self intact? Because the truth is simple. You were never alone. You were never broken. You were never lost. You just hadn't yet turned around to meet the part of yourself that never stopped waiting.